Welcome to Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie Talks Faith and Facts, a podcast that explores the relationship between faith and facts and its divine impact on the coexistence of mind, body, and spirit. Here's Dr. Cherie, a medical doctor, best-selling author, international professional speaker, a breast cancer survivor, and the queen of how to let go and live today and every day.
Welcome to another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie Talks Faith and Facts. Oh my gosh, you guys are in for a treat because I have a fantastic guest this time. We're talking about none other than Yalonda Haywood. Yalonda Haywood. I mean, this is the Breakout Expert. She is a wife, a mother, a minister, an author, a speaker, and a business life coach. She holds a master's degree in business and built a great corporate career in information technology. Now, as a top leader, she developed enterprise departments that supported projects upwards of $600 million. But while she was busy building a life, she somehow found herself imprisoned to the invisible walls that were holding her back from standing in her truth and living the life she was created to live. Layer by layer, I'm telling you guys, she broke out of fears, disappointments, expectations, limiting belief systems, the need for validation, and other toxic thoughts and behaviors. And now, through her own coaching programs and unique trademark truth and impact systems, Yalonda coaches others to break down invisible walls so that they too can get what they really want out of life. So here's to no more walls. Welcome, Yalonda Haywood. Hey, Yalonda.
Hello, and thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction.
Sweetheart, you have done so much. I felt like I was cheating you even with that brief intro because you have done so much. You've been through so much. Your past and the motivations that drove you to develop these systems are just monumental. And I'm so grateful and honored. And thank you so much for taking the time out. Your schedule is swamped, but I'm so grateful that you took the time out so that you could share with our listeners.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor, and I will always make time for you.
Oh, you feel so special. So listen, I got to jump right in because, guys, she has a lot to share. Now, Yalonda, you were born in Little Hatchie, Alabama. Little Hatchie, Alabama.
The country.
Yeah. Now, so can you share with us what growing up in a small rural town was like? You know, like your parents, your schooling, your initial dreams for life.
You know, I grew up in a small town that probably at the time I didn't realize it was so small. Yet at the same time, I knew it was. There were dirt roads. You didn't lock your doors at night. You knew all of your neighbors. You sat on the porch and people would blow. If you needed eggs, you didn't go to the grocery store. You ran down the street to Miss Ola's house and you got eggs. It just was rural. And I remember going to school and even at that age, starting to realize there had to be more. The school system that I went to didn't always have the most current textbooks. So when the city would be finished with their books, we would get them. But I didn't want the secondhand books. I wanted firsthand. So I remember researching and asking my mom, could I go to the city school? Because I knew that there was something more and I wanted it. And so I enrolled myself into a magnet program so that I could be bused away from what we call the country with one stoplight, no grocery stores, no gas stations. And I went to a school in the city because I wanted more.
Wow. I mean, Yalonda, so God already had implanted in your mind and in your heart this desire for more.
Oh, absolutely. I will say God and my parents facilitated it. One of the questions you asked was, what was it like even with your parents? I grew up in a household with a mother and a father, and my mother was absolutely the epitome of a homemaker. And she made your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, your clothes. She made everything. And then there was my father, who knew that if I work hard, I will create a life for my children that would be so different than mine. So he became the military man, the bricklayer on the side. He worked in a prison. He always worked because he never wanted us to have a need that he could not meet.
Yalonda, I'm telling you, you just keep just to envision you as a small child growing up in a rural town. Your desire, I want more. I want to go to the city. You know, your mom being, I mean, not just a homemaker, but a community maker. I mean, I envision your house was much like my house growing up in the city. Our house became the go-to house. You know, my mom was always cooking. My grandmother lived next door. My aunt lived 2 doors down from her. So between the three families, we would feed the whole block sometimes, especially with the kids,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so now, and then your dad being such a provider for his home, knowing that if I make the provision and if I make the room to grow, that there will be opportunities for my family and for my children. So that is a blessing. You know, we grew up with sometimes at a disadvantage because we were Black females, but thank God for parents with vision, and thank God for parents that support our desire and our need for more.
Oh, definitely. His structure and what he gifted me became the standard for my life, which is my ceiling shall be their floor. You know, I always do my best that the highest heights that I reach will be the lowest that my children shall ever walk upon.
There you go. Preach that. I'm telling you, you guys are going to listen to this episode and you're going to go pause, rewind, and then listen to her words and then jot them down again. Just make sure when you reuse her words that you give her credit. This woman has a lot of them, okay? So now you were married at 21. You started a corporate career and you worked your way up the 6-figure ladder. But while climbing that ladder, there were some major life circumstances in your past and your present that were informing your decisions, your starts and stops, and everything else in between. So I want to have you address some of those to give credence to your ability to be a brand ambassador for No More Walls. I mean, that is you are no more walls. You are truth and impact. But absolutely. I know that there was those starts and stops and all of that other stuff. So tell and share with our audience some of what those were. I could, but be more powerful with you sharing.
No More Walls for me is absolutely my North Star, because freedom is that guided, is that value that sits right in the middle of the essence of who I am. And it guides my every decision and every action. Now I had to grow into it. It wasn't always so clear for me. So when you talk about being married at 21 and growing a 6-figure career in corporate America, the first thing that I was is what we would call just obedient. I was the good girl. Do what is expected of you. Just do what you're told. Do what's expected. Because if you follow the rules and if you do what's expected, then everything works out for your good. The problem with that particular lesson is that it felt like prison in so many ways, because it came from broken experiences. And I believe that a broken experience will give you a broken truth. And so for me, what I learned as a child that had to overcome traumatic events in my life was just do what you're told and everything will be okay. But that wasn't always true for me. Everything wasn't okay. So I found myself in corporate America being a Black woman, sitting in boardrooms where there's 58 people and I'm one of 4 minorities, double minority at that, following rules that were never written for me. They were written to control me. And I felt yet again in prison, like there are walls that are caving in on me. There were times that I felt that I could not breathe in the life that I was creating, because I was playing by rules that never really were set for me to win, right? I had to learn how to fail, because the mindset was, you can't fail. You don't get this opportunity again. You must prove who you are. Never let them see you sweat. And the pressure of those lessons that come from broken mindsets, broken experiences, from oppression, those things, those are walls. They keep you from growing. They keep you from expanding. They keep an eagle from expanding its wings. And so for me, even though I was there, and even though everything looked successful to those on the outside, I realized that I was suffocating on the inside.
Whew. Whoa. Okay, so everybody, I'm going a little bit slow right now because I know that you need to rewind this part. And this is where you go back and you go right down all of that, because what you just spoke is so true. We are, in addition to being born with a drive, we are thusly driven by the cultural expectations of us, but we've included us in that group. But like you stated, those were rules that really didn't have us in mind. We were never really meant to be a part of that executive suite, right? When they designed those rules, there was no intention, because let's consider who created those initial walls. Those initial walls were not created by individuals that look like you and me, or sound like you and me, or even have the same body parts as you and me. But yet we are thrown in that and expected to behave a certain way. And what that did is it confines us. Like you
Absolutely.
said, it immediately puts up walls, because you're trying to walk in something that was never really intended for you. And what may have been your place that wasn't meant to be the path for you to take.
It wasn't the path, nor was it the pattern. I remember stepping into one of my first executive roles, and the corporation that I was employed by at the time decided that they wanted to hire an etiquette coach, because they don't want me to be too bold, just bold enough. Don't speak too much, just speak enough. Don't use your hands when you are talking too much, just enough. So in other words, you wanted to train and tame me into who you wanted me to be. And that's a wall. I am built for freedom. My life screams no more walls. And I remember looking into the eyes of that coach and serving notice to him that if your success is based upon you being able to cultivate me, then you just failed, because you won't be able to do it. I outlasted him. I was there long after he was, let's just say that. So, yes. But that's that restrictiveness. That's that place where people want to hold you into their expectation of who you should be, and not who God created you to be.
Yes.
Two very different things.
Extremely different. And until you get the latter of that, into being the individual and living out the life that God intended for you to live out, you will always be constrained by your walls. You will always feel unfulfilled. There will always be this nagging things that, we know that things happen in life happens, and things are not necessarily always on the right track, but you will find more and more hindrances that are coming your way because you are walking in a path that wasn't intended for you, and you're not using the pattern that God intended for you to use.
That's right.
You received some horrifying news while sitting in a doctor's office when you were only 13 years old. 13. Yeah. What happened?
So I was 13 and coming into womanhood. I started receiving what we call our cycles, our menstrual periods. And mine were irregular and heavy, and I remember my mother having to take me to the doctor. So she takes me to the doctor. And what I didn't know was that at 13, they began to consider you an adult. So as he began to talk to me about reproduction and wanting to know, are you sexually active and all of these things, he asked my mother to leave the room. So the first message is, you're an adult. Even though I wasn't. My mother had always been by my side. But what my 13-year-old brain processed when he asked her to leave the room was, I must have done something to cause this. What did I do wrong? He then proceeds to tell me that I will likely never have children. I knew then that I had done something wrong because, remember, I came from a traumatic incident where I was sexually abused as a young child. So all of this together is like, oh, what a horrible web we weave, right? Everything is woven together in a matter of confusion in my brain. I never told my mother about the molestation. So of course I could not tell her what the doctor said. She didn't know. So we left and I didn't talk on the way home. I would be 24, 25 years old before my mother discovered what was said in that doctor's office that day. And she found out then, even in an unorthodox way, because my plan was she was never going to know because I was responsible. So what happened for me that day was I began to carry a weight that was never assigned to me. I began to crumble in some ways under the pressure of what I could not do. And I can't entered into my vocabulary, even though my parents raised me in a way to believe I could do all things. But that day, things changed for me.
Wow. So guys, I'm gonna pause and ask you to think of these questions and ask yourself, am I walking in a pattern that was never intended for me? Am I walking in a plan that was prescribed by someone else, spoken into my life, and I'm doing it alone because of fear that I caused it, or fear that if I share, now I will have to share so much more and that there may be shame in my sharing? I need you to listen, because if this is you, you need to pay attention, because here is going to be direction of how you can break through. You were never intended to be in a place where you feel alone, where you feel rejected, where you feel condemned. That is not the Spirit of God. And again, if you're going it alone, you need to find someone with whom you can share. And if it's not someone that is subjective or close to you, you may want to consider Ms. Haywood, who is a life coach that has been through this, that can walk you through it and help you to see objectively decisions that were made for you that you just fell into. You fell into because you never opened your mouth, because you were scared, because of fear, because of shame.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
So now, though, fast forward, you were told that you wouldn't be able to have children. 13, after being sexually molested when you were a child.
Yes.
Now you're carrying that burden, thinking that must have been something that I did wrong. I know that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but this doctor is telling me I can't. But then, to my knowledge, I remember seeing pictures of you with boys, with children, with handsome sons. How did they get here?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, you don't need to tell us the details of how they got here.
I'll spare you those, but you know what? I met my husband when I was young. I was 20 when I met him. And I always knew I wanted to be married. Those were just core values that were instilled in me. And it was the life that I wanted for myself. I wasn't the girl that wanted to be on the dating scene. So I wasn't looking for boyfriends. I was looking for a husband, even at the age of 20. So when I met him, I remember him asking me to marry him. And I remember wanting to say yes, but fear was causing me to say, I don't know if you really meant to ask me this. And I remember saying to him, I don't think you want to marry me because you want children and I can't have children. So I don't think this is going to work. And he said, God showed me that you were my wife, and God showed me that I would have children. So that means you will have children. That's it. That settles it for me. And I was like, he better have some faith because he don't know what he's talking about. He never doubted. He infused me with a portion and shared with me his gift of faith. And I remember being at a church service, and there was the woman of God that was bringing the word that particular day. And from the stage, she said, there is a woman in this building that God has said, you will never have children. But today he is going to heal you. And so I didn't move because it was the first time since moving to another state that my parents had come to visit and they were sitting in the congregation. So I couldn't move because remember, I'm imprisoned by fear, doubt, shame, and disbelief, right? So I didn't move, and I was the conference coordinator. So everyone, hundreds of people in this building, they knew who I was. So I stood in the doorway, and I remember getting hot, like, oh, like I'm hot. So another woman walks up to the stage, and she looks at her, and she says, you'll be blessed by your faith, but you're not the one God was calling. There's someone else.
My God.
And I don't remember how my feet made it from that doorway to that pulpit, but it did. And I remember only a portion of what she said. She said, you are healed. Who is her husband? And God said that you will receive double for you, a son. And so now we have 2 sons. When I went back to the doctor after that service, I remember the doctor holding up a scan of my ovaries. And she said, do you see this image? This is your ovaries. It looks like raisins. She said, do you see this scan? She said, it's textbook perfect, but this is you. And I can't explain it. And within a year, I conceived.
Okay. So excuse me, I had to shed some tears. Because when you hear the miracles of God,
absolutely,
you need to be receptive that God is always, will continue to be in the miracle working business.
Yes, he is.
But you have to be attentive and listen when God is calling you out. And when you listen to Yalonda's testimony, you had to have heard where she heard the words, got hot. She knew that whether or not God was specifically talking to her, whether or not it was other people, whether it was a general thing, she knew that this applied to her, but still, based upon the prison that she was in, couldn't bring herself to act.
Didn't move.
But God still tarried, because when the other woman walked up and the prophetess of God said, God's going to bless you, but you're not it. Boom. That's when the anointing took over. You don't know how you got from there to the altar and getting up to her, but God will tarry with you, and God will continue to show you signs, bring people in your life, speak his words of promise on your life. So don't ever feel like all hope is gone. You can break out of that prison, because just like those chains came loose for Paul, your walls can come down. And
That's
speaking of prison, you once visited a prison with your dad.
I did.
What did you experience, and how did that impact you?
Oh my gosh. So my father was a correctional officer, and he was also a pastor. So he did prison ministry. And I would go with him on the weekends to do prison ministry. But this one particular day, he asked, because I never went in the prison, we were always in the chapel. And he asked if I wanted to see the inside of the prison. And I go, sure. I don't know why I said yes. And so he takes me into this prison. And what I remember were the doors closing, the sound of steel hitting steel. All of a sudden, my chest got tight. I felt trapped. And my father had such a confidence and he had such a posture about himself. When he walked down that hall, he commanded that hall. And I remember being afraid, but he was like, don't worry. And he would talk to the prisoners, be quiet, at ease, stand still, as though he was preparing a way for me. And so we get down that hallway. He asked me if I wanted to see solitary confinement. And for some reason I go, yeah, I do. And so he takes me, always been a risk taker.
Yes.
Takes me on this hall. And I remember it being dark. The windows in every cell was so small that you could barely see God's light shining through them. And there was this one particular cell that we passed by and it had a hole in the floor. And I said, Daddy, why is there a hole in the floor? And he said, we couldn't leave a toilet in there with that inmate. And I remember this choking feeling like, get me out. I've seen enough. I left. See, I was free that day.
Yes.
But my mind started to tell me that I wasn't. My mind started to tell me that get out or you're not going to be able to leave. I started to panic just in the walk. It would be years later, 2 decades later, before I realized that day I was introduced to a deep level of fear. And that feeling kept coming up in my life, but I couldn't identify it until God made the connection for me. And God had to begin to show me every time I was getting ready to up level, that I would go through the process of feeling like I wasn't going to be able to break out, that I had to stay where I was, that I was stuck. And he had to remind me the same way your earthly father walked the halls and commanded stillness and commanded the way to be cleared for you. I have already done the same. And the same way you walked out, you can walk out your purpose. You have overcome so much. You have broken out of so much. Now go teach others to do the same.
And a teacher you are. You certainly have the life experiences that I don't know if you could cross someone else's path and they come up with circumstances in their life that don't in some kind of way mimic yours. I mean, between, these incidences, you can see yourself in it. I can envision times when I was younger and I was placed in a position environmentally in a place where I too have felt afraid. I felt frightened, but I also felt protected. And part of that was, again, God reminding me with my own earthly father that there is that protection, that all around you, there may be fear. There may be a number of entities and circumstances that could potentially touch you. You could be in the midst of it. It's all around. But my protection, that hedge of protection around you, you can walk around all the mess, but that mess will never touch you. Will never touch you. But sometimes we need to be cognizant of it because 1, it keeps our prayer life going. 2, it keeps us mindful of just how blessed we are.
Absolutely.
And 3, it makes us aware and keeps us grounded in knowing that our trust has to always remain in God.
Yes,
God first.
yes.
The more we trust him, the more we can trust each other. It's impossible for me to trust you without me trusting God. It's impossible because ultimately I know that he is responsible and that he would allow you to come in my life to to feed into me and for me to feed into you, right? And I can only open up that trust when I know that ultimately I'm protected.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things that you experience going through that prison so many years ago. And now when things hit you that seem large, that seem oppressive in a way, you can reflect back on that experience. And just like God prepared you then, he will prepare you now.
Because to whom the Son of God has set free, who has made free, he is free indeed.
Indeed.
I am indeed free. I don't have to live my life with walls. I don't have to live my life in fear that I can't or I shouldn't or it won't. I live my life in the freedom that is promised to me because the promises are mine for the having.
Yes. Imagine living in freedom. No more walls and living in freedom. Now, you know, I can tell you that as a breast cancer survivor, I know what it feels like to be under close surveillance, right? For an abnormal test finding. You've experienced this type of surveillance as well. I mean, I'm trying. It's so many experiences with Yalonda. I'm trying to get
a book.
that y'all gonna be like, oh my God, I can't believe she's still living.
Right.
Tell us about that, because that's significant, because that's something that's almost can be like a continuous low level fear that is always in the back of your mind. And I want individuals to understand what it means and whether or not they can be okay with having the fear, because God tells us that, you know, when that he hasn't given us a spirit of fear. That means that I'm not progressively and all the time in a constant state of fear. God never stated that we would never feel fear. He said he hasn't given us a spirit of fear. So that constant, always walking around afraid. That is not of God. You can come to a situation that feels overwhelming, but God expects you to use the courage that he's given you and press on, even with that fear, because you trust him to bring you through. So absolutely, the surveillance that you went through.
You know, we say it kind of lighthearted. We laugh and we say, I can't believe she's still here. But really, sometimes I can't believe that I am still here, except for the fact that my feet hit the ground every morning and I feel the breath flowing through my lungs. When I was in college, I remember going for a pap smear, and just what you do. That's what you go every year. You get your pap smear. And I remember getting the call saying that you have precancerous cells and we need you to come back. And I go back and then I start to hear they're rapidly changing. We're going to have to monitor you. And every 6 weeks, for what felt like forever, I had to get another pap smear. Now, keep in mind, there was already a sensitivity for me regarding sexual trauma. So it wasn't just being under surveillance. I was under surveillance. I felt vulnerable. I felt naked. I felt as though someone was gazing at me, and there was already the underlying message, you are broken.
Yes.
And now here is something else. And I had to learn at a very early age, without my parents again, because I left for college at 17. I had to learn the lesson of how to prepare to live and not expect to die. I will live, I will not die. No one can do anything to me. I am doing this for my good. And I was afraid. I went through it. I felt the fear, but I didn't allow myself to live there. What I didn't know then that I know now is that season prepared me for the next trial. It prepared me for a whole nother medical challenge that I would face as an adult that took doctors 8 years to diagnose me. 8 years of losing mobility, starting to lose vision. I remember one day being upstairs and hearing my son say, Mommy, I'm hungry. Mama, can you fix me something to eat? And I go, sure. But deep down, I was saying, can I make it down the stairs? Can I make it down the stairs to prepare a meal for him and still stand up in the strength so he won't see me as ill? Right? But it was the strength of the previous trial that reminded me that I am stronger than any situation, that I am more than a conqueror, and that I was created to live, and not even sickness or disease could hold me back because I live my life with no more walls.
Wow. So see, that's why we can glory in our tribulations, because tribulations worketh experience, and experience hope. That's what God has promised us.
That's right.
Struggles give us experience, and experience give us hope. But also what I heard in your story is your faith had works with it. Faith without works is dead. And part of your works was going in for that surveillance. So many times people can hear a diagnosis and they state, oh, I believe God and I'm going to exercise my faith and things are going to be okay. But a lot of times we know that sometimes people are using those as words, and God wants you to profess those words. But your faith without works is dead. And part of your works was being obedient to the surveillance. Again, trusting that God was going to have the final say and that he would heal you and deliver you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you are listening to this podcast, I just want to reiterate what you just said. Go for the surveillance, because you won't stay in the place of fear. You don't have the spirit of it. You may have a moment of it, but it does not define you nor become you. If I had a t-shirt on, it would say I'm an advocate of the ologist. Give them to me. Give me the pulmonologist, the cardiologist, the neurologist, the psychologist. Give me the ologist, because I am going to live, and I am going to live without limits, without limits. So don't be afraid of the surveillance, for the surveillance gives another eye to what is trying to come against you. It allows you to see the weapon that is trying to form. And if you go through with the process, that's how you stop it from prospering.
Absolutely. And that whole process is not just for you, but it's to all the dominoes that's connected with you. It is for that physician. It is for your children. It's for your spouse. It's for your mom, your dad, your friends that are watching you go through this process. Be not deceived. I promise you, individuals are watching how you live, and they are influenced by it, whether you like it or not. But those individuals are watching, and they can benefit and gain their own testimony out of your victory. So it's not just about you. That's why all things work together for the good to them who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose, because we are all connected. Whether we, in one way or the other, we are all connected, whether we like it or not. And what affects one will affect all. And so therefore, you got to be careful with how you maintain, how you express your faith. And again, not allowing yourself to live in that fear. I love what you said. You may have moments of it, but you don't have a lifetime of it, because God hasn't given you that spirit of fear, right?
That's right.
Well, I got to get this one last question in.
Sure.
Now, as a business life coach and a speaker, and you are truly a gifted speaker, oh my God, you encourage others to take off their mask and own the truth of who they are. Take off their mask and own the truth of who they are. Why is this so critical, and how do you help your clients to achieve this?
I want you to consider the state that our nation has been in, where we have been masked, where we were not able to see the smile, we were not able to breathe, and we were not able to build the strength. I took my mask off and I went out a few weeks ago, and a couple of days later I had a cold. And I said, I haven't had a cold in a year. And my doctor said, because your immune system hadn't had to work. It didn't have to be strong. You were masked. When we wear a mask, we don't know how to develop the strength to go through life in a way that we can fight anything that comes to us. We forget who we are, and sometimes we forget whose we are. It is so important to take off the mask, because unless you are walking in truth, you will never make impact. One of the ways that I help my clients gain the clarity about what's holding them back so that they can get the confidence that they need to be consistent so that they can move forward with momentum is I walk them through the process of truth. Touch the wall. Identify what is holding you back. Reflect, because you may not have been the person that caused the situation, but we're definitely not going to be the person that contribute to it and allow it to keep going. I wasn't the person that caused the trauma in my life, and I wasn't going to keep giving power to that person who was no longer in my life. I teach them how to unlock the potential. What's on the inside of you? The Bible tells us that everything that we will be, God has already recorded it. We spend our life sometimes looking for purpose that's already right there, just waiting for us to uncover it. It's on the inside. It is the essence of who you are. You just have to unlock the potential and allow it to blossom. And then you have to ignite, torch that fire, and run. Hit the ground running. Don't look back. Once you make a decision, keep going. Once you say yes to you, keep growing. I believe that clarity comes when you are in motion. You don't have to know how. You don't have to know all the details. The only thing you need to know is that you are committed to finding your truth so that you can impact this world in a great way. And that can't happen when you're wearing a mask. That can't happen when you're lying to yourself. That can't happen when you won't show up in the most authentic power of who God created you to be. And that is a life of no more walls.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience before I let you go?
I leave the audience with something that I say to myself every single morning. I'm very disciplined and I have a morning ritual that I go through. But there is one line that I say. I repeat, this season of my life, I shall not miss. I challenge the audience that no matter what you are thinking about, no matter what feels like it is holding you back, no matter how many walls you feel like you're running into, know that there is an answer and there is a solution. And make a decree and a promise to yourself that you will connect, that you will do the work, and that this season of your life, you shall not miss.
Everyone, don't miss this season of your life. Please reach out to Yalonda Haywood. Using her proven trademark systems of impact and truth, she can walk you through and help you tear down all the walls in your life. Yalonda, how can they get in touch with you?
They can reach me at my website, YalondaHaywood.com, and that's YALO, because my mom's creative. Yalonda Haywood, HAYWOOD.com. I'm also at Yalonda Haywood on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And I will make sure all of her contact information is in the show notes so you can reach out to her. Don't miss this season in your life. She can help you get through that season, conquer that season, and live out the season and give you the life and allow you to live the life that God always intended for you to live. Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. Until next time.
You've reached the end of another episode of Where Medicine Meets Ministry. Dr. Cherie talks faith and facts. Be sure to visit medicinemeetsministrypodcast.com to join the conversation and to view the show notes for this episode. And follow us on Facebook at Where Medicine Meets Ministry and on Twitter at Med Meets Men. That's MED meets MIN. If you love the Where Medicine Meets Ministry podcast, we'd love to hear from you. To subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. And to connect with Dr. Cherie, go to drcheriemd.com. DRSHERIMD.com. Until next time.